I used to think mental strength meant not feeling things. That the strong ones were the ones who didn't cry, didn't panic, didn't need anyone. I believed that until the day my manager, a man named Daniel who never raised his voice, sat across from me and said something that took me years to fully understand. I worked in logistics back then, coordinating shipments for a mid-sized company outside Denver. Nothing glamorous. Spreadsheets, phone calls, delays nobody wanted to hear about. Daniel had been there almost 20 years. He was the kind of person who never seemed rattled. Deadlines slipped, trucks broke down, clients screamed, and he just nodded, made a call, fixed it. I admired him, but honestly, I also found him a little strange. Nobody stays that calm without something being off. I remember thinking he just didn't care as much as the rest of us. That his calmness was distance, not strength. I had grown up believing that being tough meant being unaffected. My father was like that, quiet, steady, never explained himself. I thought that was what a strong man looked like, so I tried to build the same wall around myself. Answer problems fast. Never let anyone see you struggle. Never ask for help, because needing help meant weakness. Then one Tuesday, a shipment went missing. Not late, actually lost. 3 pallets of equipment a client needed for a launch event in 4 days. It was my account, my responsibility. I remember standing in the warehouse, staring at an empty space on the floor where the pallets should have been, feeling something cold settle into my chest. I didn't call anyone right away. I just stood there doing math in my head, trying to figure out how badly I'd already ruined things. When I finally told Daniel, I expected him to get quiet the way he always did, make a call, and move on without much reaction. Instead, he did something that caught me off guard. He sat down. Actually pulled out a chair and sat down across from me in the break room, like we had time to spare, like this wasn't an emergency. "Before we fix it," he said, "tell me what you're feeling right now." I didn't understand the question. I told him I was fine, that I just needed to find the shipment. He just looked at me, not impatiently, just waiting. And something about that silence made me say the actual truth, that I felt like I'd failed, that I was scared I'd get fired, that I felt sick to my stomach. He nodded slowly, like that was the answer he expected. Then he said something I didn't know what to do with at the time. He said, "Good. Now we can actually think clearly." I remember being confused by that. In my mind, feelings and clear thinking were opposites. You pushed the feelings down so you could think straight. That's what strength meant to me. But Daniel didn't operate that way, and over the next few days, I started noticing things about him I'd missed for 2 years. He wasn't calm because he didn't feel things. He was calm because he let himself feel them first, quickly, honestly, and then moved. I watched him do it again a few days later when a client called furious, yelling about the delay. Daniel let him finish. Didn't interrupt, didn't defend himself. When the man stopped, Daniel said, "You're right to be upset. This is a real problem for your event." Just that. No excuses, no arguing. And somehow that response deflated the man's anger faster than any explanation could have. I asked Daniel about it later, half joking, asking if he'd taken some kind of anger management class. He laughed a little, said no, but told me something about his 20s that stuck with me. He said he used to be the opposite, hot-tempered, defensive, always needing to prove he was right or capable. He said a boss he had back then, an older woman named Renata, once told him something after he'd blown up during a meeting. She said, "You're not weak because you feel angry. You're weak if the anger is the only thing driving the car." That phrase sat in my head for a long time after he said it. The anger driving the car. I started paying attention to my own reactions differently after that. I noticed how often I made decisions from a place of fear disguised as urgency, how often I snapped at people not because they deserved it, but because I hadn't dealt with something earlier and it leaked out sideways. The shipment situation resolved itself, eventually, mundane as these things usually are. Turned out it had been misrouted to another distribution center, an easy fix once we tracked it down. But that wasn't really the part of the story that mattered to me. What mattered was what happened in my head over the following weeks. I started testing Daniel's approach, almost like an experiment. Next time something went wrong, instead of clenching down and pushing forward, I tried pausing. Actually naming what I felt, even just quietly to myself. Frustrated. Embarrassed. Anxious. It felt uncomfortable at first, almost like admitting weakness out loud, even in my own mind. But something shifted. The feelings didn't take over the way I expected. They moved through faster when I acknowledged them than when I tried to bury them. I also started noticing this pattern in other people, not just myself. The co-workers who exploded at small things were usually the ones carrying something they hadn't dealt with. The ones who stayed quiet and steady, like Daniel, weren't emotionless. They were just processing in real time instead of stockpiling it for later. I used to think emotional control meant emotional suppression. I was wrong. Real control looked more like awareness. Like knowing what you felt clearly enough that it couldn't ambush you. There was a moment, a few months after the shipment incident, when I got the chance to see how much this had actually changed me. A new hire made a mistake that cost us a client relationship we'd had for years. My old instinct would have been to get sharp, defensive, maybe even cruel without meaning to be. Instead, I found myself doing what Daniel had done with me. I sat down. Asked the guy how he was feeling before we even talked about the mistake. He looked at me like I'd asked something strange, the same way I probably looked at Daniel that day in the break room. But I saw something in his shoulders relax when he realized I wasn't there to attack him. We fixed the situation together, calmer than I would have managed a year earlier. And afterward, walking back to my desk, I remember feeling something I hadn't expected, a kind of quiet pride that had nothing to do with being right or being tough. It came from having handled something difficult without losing myself in it. I think about my father sometimes, and the version of strength I grew up believing in. He wasn't a bad man. He just never learned that stillness and suppression aren't the same thing. I don't think anyone taught him the difference, so he passed down what he knew, and I nearly built my whole identity around it without questioning it. What I understand now, that I didn't understand then, is that mentally strong people aren't the ones who feel less. They're the ones who've stopped being afraid of what they feel. They let the emotion exist, acknowledge it, and then choose their next move instead of letting the emotion choose it for them. It's such a small distinction on the surface, but it changes almost everything about how a person moves through conflict, failure, and other people's pain. Daniel retired about a year after that shipment incident. Before he left, I asked him if he remembered what he'd told me that day in the break room. He said he didn't remember the exact words, but he remembered the look on my face when I finally said out loud that I was scared. He said that was the real turning point, not for the shipment, but for me. He said most people spend so much energy pretending not to feel something that they never get around to actually solving the problem underneath it. I don't know where Daniel is now. We lost touch the way people often do. But I think about him more than most people I've worked with over the years, mostly because of that one small, quiet lesson he handed me without ever making it feel like a lesson. Sometimes I wonder how different my 20s would have looked if someone had told me sooner that strength wasn't about the absence of feeling, but about the honesty to face it. How many arguments I could have avoided. How many people I might have understood instead of judged. I still catch myself sometimes, tensing up, wanting to push a feeling down and just power through. But now I pause first. I ask myself the same question Daniel asked me. What am I actually feeling right now? And more often than not, that single moment of honesty changes everything that happens next. Maybe that's the real difference between people who seem unshakable and the rest of us. Not that they feel less. Just that they've stopped being afraid to look at what they feel before deciding what to do about it. I wonder how many of our worst decisions, our sharpest words, our most regretted moments, come not from what we feel, but from how hard we tried not to feel it at all.